welcome to Life Action Roleplay with
Cynthia Marie
and Ryan Omega. We don't have Kai because we know he is currently in Marina preparing for DR NorCal tomorrow as of this recording. So we love you, Kai. I'm going to see you tomorrow. Woo-hoo-hoo. And we also have our guests here. Let's start off to my left.
And now that I know my left from right. Sorry, it's a little pre-show humor there. Hi, I'm Courtney Kraft. Some of y'all might know me as the Anime Goddess on Twitter. I do social media and community management for Geek and Sundry and Alpha.
All right, cool. And to her left is...
Hi guys, it's Lex. Yet again, I'm back, as always. Still Cynthia's sister. That hasn't changed. No, it really hasn't. Not after 21 years. Yeah, no. It's still good. I'll keep you.
And then to my right is...
Hi, guys. It's Angela Basset. I'm one of the owners of Twin Mask LARP. And that's it. I don't know. Words.
And all of you guys have been on an episode before for Life Action Roleplay, so welcome back.
Yay!
Back again.
And drinks. What drinks are we having today?
This glorious giant bottle of smart water we are all sharing. At least 3 of us are.
The
You can
communal
guess
water.
which 3 they are.
Not me. I am going to have some strawberry lemonade that I just got at El Pollo Loco. I don't know what flavor it is.
Well, now you had to destroy the magic. What the hell? Yeah.
Well, they could still guess that it's going just the 4 of you.
So us 4 ladies are sharing. Guess which one of the 3 of 4. Whatever. Forget it. Forget it. Moving on. I'm sad and numbers.
Well, I mean, I'm drinking the same thing I always drink, which is Coke.
All right, well, now y'all know.
Yeah.
It's me and Lex sharing a giant bottle of smart water. Thank you. Yeah.
Shoutouts. Do we have shoutouts for people today?
I totally have a shout out, which is a really cool, weird, twisted story that's going to get everybody to ooh and ah for a second. So
Good.
My
Ooh and
shout out is to Izzy Spring. Yes, see, everybody's lighting up with the ooh and the ah there. So Izzy is a player in Twin Mask that we all know and love, and she's amazing. And she came out to join us in Vampire. So Izzy's a sweetheart, love her. She came out to do play Vampire, and she was playing a Tremere. She was cool. So we're sitting towards the end, and she comes up to me, and she goes, "I have to tell you something." I was like, "Yeah, sure, what's up?" And she was like, "So I was talking to my friend, and started kind of like describing who you were, and apparently, and I may get it wrong, so Izzy, if you're listening to me, please correct me on the story, but essentially she was like, I described you, and her friend freaked out because she was like, is she a belly dancer?" And Izzy's like, "Yeah." "Is she on Sirens of the Realm? She plays Duracell? Oh my god!" And I was just like, whoa, too many like worlds that just crossed all together. So Twin Mask Vampire and Sirens of the Realm all like, and I was like, what the heck? And Izzy's like, it's like I know a celebrity. I was like, no, I'm your friend. I'm your friend. So anywho, shout out to Izzy, because that would like kind of made my night for a second. I was like, am I? Nah, just me. It's kind of cool.
Love you, Izzy.
Love you, Izzy.
Yay.
Oh, now I kind of want to do a shout out to Izzy too.
Do it.
Because, okay, so Izzy, you were awesome. Izzy put together a music ensemble at the last Twin Mask.
I heard about this.
Yes, so it was a group of like 6 or 7 of us with a viola and a French horn and a harp and a flute. And I sang for the first time, like, as a performance in many, many years. And I was really nervous about it, but Izzy was super encouraging. Aww. And it turned out to be really awesome. And I remember when we did our final song where we all played together, seeing, like, Corin's face in the front row going, oh, what? Like, he couldn't believe that we were all doing this together at once.
Yeah,
so thank you,
awesome.
Izzy, for making that awesomeness happen.
Nice. Anybody else?
Anyone else want to praise Izzy?
Praise Izzy.
I mean, she dealt with my vampire yelling in her face. And that was a great reaction. She was like, oh. And Noah, and both of them go to our vampire. They've never seen me be that hyper, because they only met me in Twin Mask, and they're like, oh, this is a new side of you. So.
And Noah's been on our show, too, for anyone who's listening. He was in our How to Bard episode.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He was awesome. Because he kept reading haikus that he made on the spot.
Yeah, it's impressive.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Let me see. So, coming from me, shout out to Last Frontier, which I played last weekend. Especially to Lauren, Jesse, John Ross, and Matt Quick, who plays Dax. I had like a lot of really good role play scenes with Dax. It's at the point where Dyer and Dax have become best buddies, but I still remember this one scene where I was in bleed out and both my legs were mangled and I was taken away out to the med bay. And as soon as I was getting healed, he just ran over to me and he goes, buddy, you can't die. If you die, I'm going to have to punch you. I'm going to have to hurt you because you can't die. And I said, I'm fine, Dax. And then he grabs my hand and goes, I love you, Dyer. And I go back and I said, and I just put my hand to his face like, I love you, Dax. And I faint.
Aww. Drama.
It was a really cool scene. It was super dramatic, and we've been just like super buddy ever since. So, good job.
Drama is the best.
Drama is the best.
Love it.
Yes.
All right. So for today's topic, our topic today is online role play, which actually has a lot to do, and at the same time, nothing to do with LARP. But so many of us do remember a lot of role play on either chats or MUDs or Discord, and I'm curious where everybody started your online role play. I would like to start with Sin.
Oh gosh. Here we go, show my age. Started online role playing AOL chat, Sailor Moon. Yeah, that was the thing. Yeah, made various outer senshis.
Okay, so what senshi were you?
I'm not gonna talk about that.
Okay, fine.
It was weird. It's very, very odd. Okay, Stardust. Okay, Jesus, like way out there. It was great, but it was a lot of fun. And then I transitioned to Yahoo Chat because like AOL like kind of, and then did a lot of Yahoo Chat. So that was a lot of X-Men, any Marvel stuff that I was into that a lot. And then transitioned to here we go, MySpace. Yeah, MySpace. I used to make I had a million different profiles. I had to remember all the passwords, and it's probably why I'm good at my job now. But yeah, that's my background in online role playing. So I've done see if you remember this: single line role play, paragraph role play, and novella role play. So like multiple pages of writing.
Wow.
That's my role play. What about you, Ryan?
All right, so I've definitely done a lot of that, but my very first one was AOL Chat X-Men roleplay.
I was up in there for a bit.
Yeah, and I was Psylocke.
What? She's my favorite.
I was Psylocke. So, and there was a lot of combat using the random dice rollers.
That's what I did with Sailor Moon. Wild, crazy gesture hands just happened, okay?
Yeah. But yeah, and then occasionally I DM'd or I guess game mastered, which meant that I was just like running the scene in the chat, and I just came up with super unusual puzzles that they would try to solve, because most of the time it was just battle, and I thought that's not super interesting to me. It's like they need to solve a puzzle and then they'll do battle, and so some people like that, until I got tired of it and went on to Vampire LARP, ironically. All right, there was a silence.
I'll go next because it's funny that you should have mentioned Psylocke before. Mm-hmm. So I actually got my start in online roleplay at a LARP. Some friends dragged me to this small convention in Michigan, and there was a Star Wars LARP going on. It was a PvP game. I had no idea what I was doing. I had 4 hours in the car to create a character, and so I based her on Psylocke. Oddly enough, and I named her Psylocke, and I've regretted that for the last 22 years. But after the game, after that game, we started role-playing through email, and this was 1996. So the internet was just kind of like becoming a thing. Yep. And I started an email for a while, and I would have nights where my friends and I would be at our desk at the same time, emailing each other back and forth within minutes. And eventually my friend was like, get on Instant Messenger. So I got on AOL Instant Messenger as well. And that's how we ended up doing text roleplay for years and years. And then I've done forum-based stuff. And then more recently I've been doing Discord. That kind of seems to be the place to go.
Yeah.
Nice. Angela?
Okay. So, I mean, for the most part, mine's pretty similar to you guys. Although, I guess I really started in Forum RP, specifically for the LARP that I was playing at the time, which was Avalon. So yeah, I did Forum RP there first, and then like we would kind of transition to AOL Messenger as well, and just kind of do like, you know, our own little side RP things. Other than that, I know it's not text-based, but it kind of is. We did Neverwinter Nights, where we had an RP server. So, like, pretty small group of players, very, like, intimate RP. That's actually how we met Jordan, who I think was also on the show at one point. Mm-hmm. And since then, it's mostly just been Discord, Chatsy, whatever we're using for Twin Mask.
Lex?
So me being the youngest here, I just recently started online role-playing, so it's still very new, but I use email for Vampire, Facebook Messenger, which is actually, I kind of prefer that, because it's a lot easier, and then recently with Twin Mask, Discord, which is also very new. And I did forums for like a hot second for our Vampire as well, but other than that, it's still very new and fresh since I've only been LARPing for going on 2 years now.
So, Dad used to ask me why I could type so fast. Role-playing.
Role-playing?
Chat. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So when you get into combat, you're like, oh my god. Typing real fast.
Mine would just be all errors and red spaces, red underlines. Like, what did you say?
All right, so who, I know the answer to this one, but who stayed up real late, way past the time that you really should be going to bed to go to role play? Because I know I did.
Pretty sure I did that last week.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
So you just get into a scene and it's exciting and then you're having fun. You just don't want it to end.
I experienced my first heartbreak when I was younger over role play.
Aw.
Yeah, that was a great time to experience that. So
Was it bleed?
Oh, it was major bleed. Oh, it was bad.
And this was an online.
Oh yeah, it was a person that I role played with like multiple different characters with, and we like transitioned from Yahoo to the MySpace kind of world together, and like all of our characters were together, and I was just like, well, I really like this person, and he was like, I don't like you, like that, and I was like, oh.
I also
you don't know me.
I also experienced heartbreak
Yeah.
from online roleplay because unfortunately I was in the closet, so I had only really limited access to who I can talk to, and so it ended up that there was a person who I was role playing with that I just, after role-playing sessions, like in the X-Men, we would just continue to chat. And I didn't really know anything about this person, but I suddenly fell in love with this person. And what was really odd was I fell in love with, like, the name and the personality.
Mm-hmm. Oh, girl.
And then I saw the picture. And then he said he wanted to see me when he, like, happened to travel out, you know, my way. And then I thought, okay, maybe the picture is just bad. And then I met him in person. It was worse.
No.
And it was just kind of, it was a huge shock because I thought, oh my God, am I being super superficial? Because like I fell in love with this person that is on the screen in these words, but I just couldn't.
Yeah.
And you know, like, and that's where I'm really, really sorry, you know, that that connection didn't work.
That happens.
So
But I feel like this is something that happens almost more easily in text-based roleplay than in LARP, because when you're at LARP, you can get their energy. It's easier to talk to them out of character. Because I've gone through a similar situation where I was role-playing with someone online, and I talked about this in an article that I wrote a couple months ago about this guy I met in an MMO when we had role-played a relationship, and I was going through a really awful relationship at that time, so it was kind of my escape. And I realized, you know, a long time after that I was in love with the idea of his character and not him. He turned out to be kind of a jerk in real life, but I liked the fantasy that he presented. So has that ever happened to any of you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That was that heartbreak was a brilliant writer and fell in love with the writing and like all of the characters that were playing, and it became familiar, and when that person was not that, you're just like, oh yeah. But on the flip side, it is nice to find out that person that you're role playing with is actually a really good and special person on the other side, and you actually do make that connection. So there's good and bad, I guess, on both sides of it.
I wonder, so I know that it's kind of hard to convey feeling through text sometimes, and I kind of wonder if some of that is also us, like, assigning things to the text that you're getting, like I'm sure, you know, if you're role-playing, like, romantic situations and stuff, then obviously, like, the intention is for it to be romantic, but, like, if you're kind of subconsciously, like, looking for that, if you get more out of it than, like, maybe necessarily was intended by the person. I don't know, like, just a random thought that I had.
Oh, it's a good thought. Well, I guess in one of my role plays, and this was a role play scene that happened between LARPs, this is a person that, and this happened in Vampire LARP, and this person was playing a prince. And the guy, out of character, is also a handsome guy. We got into a scenario where, but because he was a prince, oddly enough, there's that thing where in nerd culture or geek culture where sometimes that person, because they're so highly in a position that they become inaccessible, and not on purpose, that's just how that particular role play is in game. But then we got into a scenario where I was a ghoul, and then I was supposed to stay over at his place, and we were supposed to get to know each other because I was held hostage, and as I blocked somebody else. And then in the meantime, we just role played scenes so that I wasn't just left out. And I realized, oh, well, first of all, this guy that I'm role playing with actually is super smart and very funny. It's weird because I also know this person, you know, at the game, but when we're at game, we barely talk. But we talk more in these 3 or 4 hour sessions. It's super weird how I could connect to that even though I barely talk to the person and he's literally standing 5 feet away from me. Really, really weird. But I guess, you know, like what you had mentioned, Angela, like sometimes there's a level of projection that we put into another character, and we don't necessarily invent the relationship ourselves. Like there is something there, but we do invent what we get out of it to fulfill whatever we need in role play.
Yeah. That is a
It's
darn
deep.
good point. Yeah. And podcast done. Let's go.
I thought we were talking about text-based roleplay. All right. So what are some of the things that you guys like about text-based roleplay more than, let's say, LARPing or tabletop gaming?
Oh, I have. Do you?
Yeah. What I like about it is that there's not enough hours during the actual game to communicate with certain people, and sometimes you don't need a big show. You can just like, hey, I need this small exchange, or just little behind the scene things that don't need to take up a lot of time. I've always enjoyed that. Or on the other side, it helps create deeper connections with characters. There's sometimes I don't talk to them during the game, but when we do a downtime, I'm like, oh, you know, we're best friends, or we have this secret connection that nobody knows about. I'm like, this is my little secret here. That has always helped me, but I'm still new to all of this.
So, remind me your question again.
What do you like about text-based role-playing instead of LARP?
Yeah. Okay. So, I am not a wordsy person. Like, I'm a dancer, so I convey a lot of my stuff through movement. So it's always been very hard for me to speak in character. I've actually, throughout this entire year of me doing, live stream and stuff like that, I've gotten better at being quick and like on my feet. But when I first started, like I barely talked. Like I would sit in the corner and kind of like more like observe things. So when I'm on the computer typing everything, I'm much more eloquent, or my characters come across either more eloquent or more quippy, because I have the time to relax and research certain words that I like want to use to convey certain emotion or like trigger something. So I prefer actually being on the computer, because then I can take my time and really overanalyze and research, and like really I'm turning to my Ravenclaw self. But yes, that's it. I rather do that than LARP, because with LARP, when people like try to get in my face, like with vampire, my character Lola, they'll try to like get her to do quippy things, and I'm like, hey, insert something like good here.
I'm the same way. Like, I find that it's easier for me to find my character's voice when I'm writing.
Yeah.
Because I have the time to stop and think about it. And some characters I'm just faster with, and it comes more naturally. So like Lala, like I know exactly what her voice is. I know exactly what she'll say. She doesn't think much, but for my she doesn't. Intelligence too. High wisdom. So like in my Star Wars game, I play this Imperial officer who was an interrogator, and she's an ISB director. So she's very smart and very analytical, and is always analyzing what you're saying. So it allows me to just take the time to think about exactly what do I want to say and exactly what do I want to do. Because like yourself, improving, doing things on the fly and reacting to things, that is just my weakness. That is super hard.
No, I think for me, I agree with you guys as well. But the added aspect of having social anxiety, the online gets rid of that to some degree. So, I mean, even though, like, I still get a little bit of the, like, I got a response, now what do I do? But it's a little bit easier for me to actually be able to say what I mean through text versus being put on the spot in a live situation where you're like, oh, God, I don't know what to say. But also on what Lex was saying, I like the fact that it does, again, give you more time to establish, like, closer bonds with people, because you, like, a lot of times I feel like, excuse me, character backstories don't really come up in LARP because you don't really have a lot of time to have, like, really deep conversations with people because there's constantly shit happening. But when you're one-on-one, like, having like online RP, you can really get into a lot of the backstory and like the depth of your characters, and that in and of itself also just like strengthens your connections with people.
I've seen a lot of that on the Twin Mask Discord, especially because you get time to sit down with people who you might not normally see at all in a game, and then you're like, hey, how did you die? Where are you from? What do you think about this? And I've definitely seen a lot of relationships grow that way through Discord. It's been great.
I like the sake of campfire, because those of us who haven't been showing up, we all gather back around the fire, and I hear everybody else's story. I was like, oh, okay, cool, great.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, glad to know that happened.
Let me see. So for me, I am more comfortable doing things online. However, just having done LARP so much recently, I feel like there's a lot that I can convey more just in person, because I feel like I need to see the person in order to feel and engage. However, what's good about text-based roleplay is if I say that I am an 800-year-old wizard woman who comes from the fair places of Egypt, and I have this magic bottle, you don't stop and question, and you don't look at me and stop and question and go, no, you're not. Like, you basically put things out there, and that's what they are. So there's the acceptance that is already there, because whatever I say of myself is going to be true, or for that scene, you will buy whatever it is. I don't have to worry about makeup. I don't have to worry about costume. I don't have to worry about the external, but you're not that. It's like, no, I am this. And the other people in the game accept that.
So going off of that, I would venture to say that a good advice for anyone who may be struggling with text-based stuff is the rule still applies, the yes and statement or no but statement, and it's actually, to me, it's a lot more fun to do the yes and in text-based, because just as you were saying, like, it's more believable that, like, you're this Egyptian goddess or Egyptian sorcerer or wizard and stuff like that, like, and you throw a glittering, sparkling bomb at me, like, it's just that much more fantasy to go, yes, and I turn into this magical, like, butterfly thing, like, and, like, both of our brains are just firing off, versus when you're in a LARP and you say that and you're like, you don't have the wings for a fizz wrap, like, I can't really picture that, you know?
Yeah, or forsooth, I am a butterfly. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
And we get that.
Sure, right.
Yeah.
But the yes and no but still totally applies. Checking in with your fellow person also still applies, because sometimes you may ruffle feathers by accident. And always checking in is good. And I think bleed, I think we were starting to kind of talk about that. Like the bleed can become pretty heavy on text-based because you don't get to read said person's emotions. Yes, Lex, you sound like you have some...
I do, because you're leading into the question I have for the experienced online role players here.
Okay.
What up, yeah?
So, I'm actually the opposite of you guys. I don't think I'm really good with online role playing. I feel like I can just carry a conversation better in real life. And my biggest concern, since I do play somewhat and bad characters, I play not nice people sometimes.
Antagonists.
Yeah, well, sometimes the words don't want to come out.
Yeah.
But how can you be gruff or a little rude without being too rude, I guess? Like, while it's just online. Like, sometimes someone says something, and for me, like, oh, my character doesn't like that statement. But myself is like, oh, I don't want to type something and the other person take it the wrong way. Like, how do you guys go about that?
I have an idea. Okay. Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. Great. So, I, again, go back to my, like, movement-based stuff. So I like to describe how my character's body language starts to occur. And I think that's a better setup than immediately attacking said person with verbal words. So if you said something to me that my character didn't like, I would probably start writing something about, like, Lola's eyebrow would, like, raise, and she would slowly kind of slump in her chair, and her hand would raise just ever so slightly above her chin. And I'm, obviously, you guys can't see it, but I'm actually doing the physical movement. So you start to see this angry person before I start saying that quip. So it sets up the reader as, like, oh, did I piss that person? Oh, yep, that's the line, I pissed that person off. Okay, cool. But then you can also retort back, right? So, like, once she says the quippy thing, then, you know, Lola sits back in her chair, just grabs a glass of wine, and then add a character, be like, hey, kind of a little annoyed by that, can we talk about that, sort of a thing. That's how I would approach it, at least.
That sounded super poetic, by the way. You being angry was very poetic.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that kind of along that line, it's always interesting trying to make sure that your text comes across the way that you're intending it to. How do you guys deal with making sure that the intention of what you're saying gets across if, like, there's any ambiguity to it? Like just making sure that if you're saying something, it doesn't come across, like, completely wrong. I don't know, words. Apparently I can't talk.
I don't think there's a way to really guarantee that.
Yeah.
But I feel like there has to be a way. I mean, maybe with, like, descriptions, like, kind of like what Cin's saying, just kind of, like, adding to the conversation and the dialogue to kind of get the point across better. But because I've had situations in Forum RP where I say something and then for some reason the person completely takes it as antagonistic, even though it had nothing to do with that, and then just goes off.
So I will present the idea that it wasn't you, it was them, maybe having a bad day, and then going into reading this immediately sets them off. There could be some word choices that may have set it off. It could be a trigger point that maybe said word that you may have used triggered something in them. Like, it may not just be you. Like, because I've had days where I'm reading something and I had a really rough day at work and I just don't want to deal, and someone keeps, you know, messaging me like, hey, can you answer? Hey, can you answer? Hey, can you answer? I'm like, freaking fine. And I read it and I'm like, gah! And start, you know what I mean? Like, and it wasn't you.
Across.
Yeah.
It
Tone.
was heavy.
Tone. That's the word that I keep looking for.
Ah, yes, tone.
Tone.
And tone is something you lose in text.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
So it's kind of hard sometimes in text-based RP to make sure that the tone is conveyed properly.
Yeah.
So kind of what I like to do in terms of tone is when I'm trying to convey something that may be serious or angry, I actually kind of like to find literature references or novel references that kind of convey that similar idea of the conversation, and kind of read how the author wrote that sort of thing to pick up on the tone and kind of use similar language so that I'm not coming across as different, perhaps. But again, that's taking the time to do the research and all that jazz, and sometimes passion just comes out.
Yeah, I think that's also a problem that happens a lot is with text-based RP. I feel like people get a little brave sometimes in regards to their responses and say things that they wouldn't say in person because they get to be behind a computer screen. So there's still that safety net of, I can be an asshole because I'm behind a computer. You can't actually respond immediately in a negative way because we're not actually talking to each other. And I think that sometimes that can be dangerous as far as online RP, especially in situations where it is mixed with LARP, because maybe you're in like the Discord group and you're having a conversation and you guys get like angry at each other. The next time you see each other in person, you don't know necessarily what the situation is going to be like, because it's like, okay, were you actually mad at me? Like, was that just role play? You know, it gets like the boundaries get blurred a little bit, I think, in situations like that. But yeah, I've clearly had too many bad experiences with people in online RP. But
So what's the best way to combat something like that?
Talking to them.
yeah,
Sometimes you have to pull them aside and be like, hey, did you understand that this is what I meant? Because sometimes I'll do that if I'm trying to imply something as a character and I want to make sure that the other player, like, I know your character would know what I'm getting at, but do you, the player, know what I'm getting at?
Right.
So sometimes you have to have that silent conversation. And the same thing happens with conflict. You know, Cynthia, you and I did that when we were role-playing enemies for the first time, but we were constantly checking in and saying, I love you.
Love you. Take care of it.
It is hard to talk about these things with people when, like, it's a friend and you're upset with them, and that's the thing you have to do. Sometimes you just have to say, look, Ryan, I know we had that hard scene. I'm getting this weird vibe off you, like maybe you're mad, can we talk about it? And that's just something that takes maturity.
And I would also like to add, it's okay to respond with that, no, I'm not okay, and I need to deal with this, and I will be back to you soon, I promise. But it's something that I have to deal with right now.
I would rather be told that than to be misconstrued.
Yeah.
Like, because then I go, oh, I now know exactly where that person stands. Like, okay, for me, when I do online role play in the past, if the misunderstandings happen in scene, I kind of assume that things are in scene, but it is important in my online role play that I actually put both of us put scene ends. Like, that's what we both do, and then we could talk about what happened. Just having that scene begins, scene ends that we both write actually clarifies a whole lot of things. And what's interesting how we've been talking about being careful when you're dealing with potential conflict, but what about when you're dealing with a little bit more romantic role play?
Oh,
That's a tricky subject.
It's a very tricky subject.
Because each game has different boundaries and each player has different boundaries.
I think it's just most important to talk to your role play partner and say what those boundaries are. Because even though your game may have certain boundaries, if you and that other person are consenting to doing something a little bit further, just set up those boundaries, set up those roles, like just know where it starts and where it ends. So that's how I at least would approach it. And if you're totally down to write smutty stuff, then
cool.
have fun,
Yeah.
enjoy. If you want to fade to black, that's okay too. Like, Vampire deals with a lot of sexuality kind of stuff, and it's okay to fade to black if you're uncomfortable with going further than that.
Yeah, because I think in some of my online role plays, they do go pretty far, and we don't fade to black, and which is a choice. But it is interesting that for me, like, doing some of that role play made me understand certain things about myself that I would never have the opportunity to do in real life. And I realized that part of it is imagination, but part of it is, this is what my character thinks. And that's very key in line role play. It's like, yes, you might be role playing in a LARP and you're talking to a person, so you have that scene, but often you get to think as you write. And so a lot of what you write is not just projection, but these are the things that I think consciously that I can take back to my character. And that's kind of like why, to some extent, some of us value the text-based RP, because we have thoughts, and those thoughts are immediately validated because they're now on paper and they automatically accept them or have to deal with them. In person-to-person role play, it's not always validated. It's not always accepted. But when it's written, for some reason we go, this is a thing, and you must deal with it.
So I'd like to add in on what you're saying. You made a comment earlier that online role-playing is not directly related to LARP, and yet it is. I find it, especially right now, as relevant as like all of us playing the same game, it is very, very, very relevant because it's what's fleshing out your character in between games. And all of us have touched on it. I just wanted to kind of make it more of a specific point that these downtimes are just as significant as the LARP that you're playing itself. So for Vampire, like there's a lot that we do in our downtimes that influence a lot of what's going to end up happening in the next game. Like it's the only place that you could spend your influences, for example. Well, majority of the place that you could spend your influences because you're slinging stuff to do in like background, pulling puppet strings, and it comes up in the next game. Same thing with Twin Mask is where you're forging connections because you don't know what next adventure you're going to be going on that you're going to need said demon to go do something, you know?
Looking at Lex.
Looking at Lex is a little demon.
I have no problems with that.
Yeah,
I know what I can do.
It's great. So I just wanted to flesh that point out is that they are very, very relevant, but they're also modular that you can actually do it on its own, right? You don't necessarily need a LARP attached to it. In fact, it's a safe way if you were afraid to do any sort of role playing. It's a safe place to kind of start. That's where most of us have started. So.
Yeah. And continuing on this, Brian, you brought up a good point. Sometimes we learn things about our characters through writing, and when we're literally reflecting on what we just did because it's right there in front of you. You can read what you did. You can go back and reread it. Whereas when you're improvising in person, you say it and sometimes you immediately forget. And when you have it in text, you start noticing things about yourself. So like I've been playing Strada in Twin Mask, and I didn't have a lot of plans for her as a character. I said I'm just going to let her mold naturally. And I realized through the text-based stuff that she doesn't really have very good manners, like table manners. So I constantly have her talking with her mouth full and like pointing at people with her fork, like just not
That's great.
being aware of that. And that's just something I kind of discovered. She also says, "Oh," a lot. And that's just something I discovered doing text-based roleplay.
Yeah.
I think my favorite combination on the keyboard in text-based RP is ...
Yes. People have questioned why I do that in text.
I know, and I do it. Yeah, I do it in text messaging now too. And like my responses to people. Sorry, I'm clapping again. My responses to people when I have just regular conversations over Messenger, I write like I talk because of text-based RP. Like if I respond with, like if I want to respond to somebody that I understand what they're saying, my response is nods in like asterisks.
Yes.
I do that too. And it's just because of text-based RP. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Or double parentheses when you're trying to talk out of character.
Yep. Even though you're already talking out of character.
Yep.
It's like, wait, okay. You can always tell the people that have done text-based RP based on how they type.
Oh my god, I'm blushing so hard about that.
I just realized that often I will respond to people with asterisks, nods, asterisks, and I realized that directly came from online RP, and I do that all the time.
Do you guys find that you do that more than you use emojis?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Or the glare. And now, like in Outlook, because I literally just did this today, it said glare, was it asterisk glare, asterisk, and it bolds it.
Yeah,
I was like,
that.
I know, that's so annoying. It's like, but okay, that didn't convey what I wanted it to, but whatever. Or I also do sigh in asterisk a lot.
Le sigh.
So right now we're talking about like more fast messenger based roleplay. What about, because we haven't really touched on this yet, like longer format, like forum based roleplay, or when you're like writing pages back and forth, like what are your experiences with that kind of stuff?
In terms of like character signaling or like characters on the keyboard
in general,
signaling?
like what have you done in that kind of format, and have you learned anything from it?
I did one through LiveJournal, and it was a game that is run by my friend Tomas, who now lives in France. And when he was here, we all joined this one live journal group, and we were all different characters of this court to eliminate each other off of the game. And the way we had to assassinate each other was we had to describe a scene that implicates somebody in that scene. And you have to read all the posts before you, because everything that someone says cannot be negated. So if you post first, you have the position of power. But if you post second or third, you had to consider what the person said beforehand, and you kind of had to either twist their words, but you can't say that's wrong.
Right.
And what ended up happening was it made me have to really think about characterization, as well as using words against people. And it's a very unusual way to use text-based role play, because usually you expect text to be, okay, this is the truth. It's like, no, I now have to take what your words are.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you have to find the loopholes. You have to twist them, and you have to figure that out to the point where at the end someone gets indicted for trying to assassinate the king. It's like, it's that guy.
So FYI, people who are listening, if you ever want to play a manipulative character, that was literally the cruxes of it all.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah. I would try to run a game like that. I just have to get the rules. But.
Yeah.
I think that would be a lot of fun. You should do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was playing on a Pro Boards forum at one point, and it was a game where they had adoptable artwork that went with it, and it was all like anthropomorphized like animals, and you like picked your like animal dude, and like you would go into like the forums, and you would see if there was groups that were open to like people just randomly jumping in, or you could start your own, and like if somebody were interested, they would like read your little intro thing of like, hi, I'm playing this little like bunny rabbit that's like jumping around in the woods and like looking for like people to hang out with or whatever. I'm just using that as an example. That's totally not what I did. But and then like somebody would join into your conversation, and of course like paragraph wise they would, you know, interact with your character, and then you would respond, and then like eventually some other person would come in and they would add on to that. And it was pretty fun for a little while, but then my anxiety got a little bit ahead of me, and I was like, oh God, I don't want to respond to people anymore. It was terrible. But it was fun, and it was cute because you had like the little like visuals to go with it too, of like, this is my character, look how cute they are.
So along those lines, what I learned doing MySpace role playing, where like, you know, your posts can get pretty darn long, I learned how to do HTML coding because you had to change your backgrounds and your fonts. I learned how to do Photoshop because you got to Photoshop your characters.
Nice.
So based on different descriptions, I would pull like pictures from Google and like change all the coloring and stuff like that. I learned how to embed music on MySpace without like before they actually were allowing you to add music. Like I figured out how to embed all of that, and I learned how to like decently write before I even went into college. So I was like, when college was like, oh, I need you to write like a 6-page paper, I was like, I got you 12. What do you need? So I learned a lot from doing MySpace. But I think probably one of the biggest things I learned was dealing with conflict, how you come across in tone. Because obviously growing up, you don't really understand tone and conflict and stuff like that. And I've gotten into some pretty heated times when I was growing up, to the point that I like shoved my keyboard and like walked away. I was pissed at it. Like, I think you just got to learn how to like kind of come back and be like, okay, this is fake for one. For two, let's actually like look through and see what people were saying. So along the lines of what Ryan was saying, I started getting really good at reading what people are saying and taking the words and be like, so you didn't really mean that, like you meant this, and this word means this, and started manipulating things that people were saying. So I learned a crap ton role playing on MySpace.
Well, I did it in college. A group of my friends got me really into anime. And we were all big fans of this one series called Revolutionary Girl Utena.
Oh,
which, you know Utena. So Utena it's a shoujo series about these high school kids, and they have sword duels on top of this like huge balcony, and they're fighting to win this girl named Anthe who will grant them power to change the world. It's really crazy and it's amazing anime. You should watch it. So we decided to play a game where we did an alternate ending, and it would actually continue the duels. And I ended up playing Utena, and for each duel, it was very much all about that yes and. Someone would write their would write several paragraphs of what's happening. You would then you would react to what they were saying as the first half of your post, and then you would add to it.
Yeah.
So what I like to do, because some college classes I had were garbage, I would sit in class and I would write posts by hand in my notebook. So it looked like I was taking notes when really I was responding to people's stuff. We did this through Yahoo groups. And the best part was I made a friend. Her name is Jennifer. And we met through this game and we stayed online friends ever since. And we ended up becoming really close friends. And we have never met to this day because she lives in Florida. But that's how we met, was playing that online game.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
We all look alike. Hey,
My
newbie,
turn.
have you ever done long format?
Well, with forums, I learned that I am very shy on it, actually. There is a lot of scenes, and because sometimes, it took several hours for people to reply, I just felt that the character I had, and it's all in my head, I know this, but I felt like I couldn't ever insert myself into the role play. So I was a lurker. I would read everything. I was like, everything sounds so amazing. I have no input. I have nothing to contribute to this, and I felt real bad on my end, but I learned that I should make characters that are more engaging, I guess, like that I can insert myself with, because I definitely made a person who just had no business to ever talk to anybody except for the NPC that the DM made, and I was like, oh, that's not fun for him either. So,
Can I just add, isn't it the best feeling when someone finally posts the response that you've been waiting for?
Yes.
Like hours or days. And you're like, yes, it's here. And you drop everything to just go read it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the one dangerous thing for me about online roleplay, because even though it's written, there is a compelling need to respond right away. Because you have to. You can't wait 3 hours, and if you have to do something else for 3 hours, I'm like, then it's like, when's the 3 hours up? It's like, I need to respond to this now. It's like, and even though we know that we live real lives, like, you just want to respond to the thing.
So question, does that stem from doing online chat room roleplay stuff? Or is it just an innate need?
I think it's an innate need because you get excited for it. It's something interesting that breaks the norm of your banal everyday life.
I agree.
Yeah, and probably if you don't respond right away, you're just going to be sitting there thinking about it the entire time. And then you're not able to type it. And then when you are able to type it later, you forgot all the things that you were thinking of. And it's like, crap, this doesn't sound as good as it did in my head like hours ago when I thought about it. But
Okay, so note to role players, take notes.
Right.
Write down messages in your phone or in a notepad.
And
what Courtney does.
And
write
don't
it in hand.
respond when you're tired, because then you wake up the next morning and you're like, wait, I said that?
Oh my god, my typos. So many typos.
Yeah, tired and drunk text RP bad. It's like, oh shit, what did I say?
That's the one thing I'm really grateful for about Discord is you can go back and edit out your typos. I type so fast that I miss things really easily. And then I'm like, oh, click the 3 dots, edit, fix that little bit of punctuation. Okay, we're good.
Yeah.
Because on Discord, it's there forever.
I feel kind of bad that I'm not really on any Discord roleplays, and it's because I'm on so many of them, and that messages would just ping all the time, and it's like I can't get anything done if I were to be on a Discord. So these days, if I do side roleplay, like I just say, just instant message me.
Yeah.
It's fine, because when I'll get to it, I can get to it, and then I could spend a good 5 or 10 minutes like doing the chat back and forth, or maybe even in the middle of work where I just respond with a sentence. You respond with a sentence, I can still get work done. But for me nowadays, like in the past, it was great when I had more time, but when I have little time now, I try to keep more of my role plays to LARP, or in the case of one of my friends. He decided, I'm just going to come over to your house and we're going to be in costume and we're going to just do this thing. And I'm like, deal.
Cool.
We did, and it was great because then it was like that person was literally right there.
Yeah,
But
I've done that too.
yeah, it's very rare, but it is fun, and you should do it every once in a while. Once in a while with the person you trust.
There's
Right.
someone I've been trying to roleplay with at Twin Mask, and like our schedules just keep not lining up. And I just want to say, just come over and let's just sit on my lawn and roleplay for like an hour and just talk.
Get on my lawn.
Get on my lawn.
On my lawn. Yeah, so in regards to Twin Mask, before Twin Mask actually started, there were a couple different ways that text-based RP kind of started the game and like created some of the world setting for the game. One of the things that John was doing while he was in college is he did a text-based RP that was based on, I don't know if you guys are familiar with a website called Nation States.
Yes.
Yeah, so you pick your little nation, and every day they give you like 3 like issues that you have to respond to. Which, I mean, on Nation States you get like, I think they were assigned like specific responses, like you couldn't make up your own. But the way that John did it is he had each of the players create a nation in this fantasy setting, and you know, kind of role play mostly the ruler of that nation, and then every day he would send you a topic of like a few different topics of discussion, and you would have to make decisions based on that, and we would all respond in email with how like the ruler or whatever head of the organization or whatever it was would like how they would actually respond to those issues. And usually it was like text-based RP of them just thinking it out, talking to their advisors, that sort of thing. That's actually how I started the Nadian Empire. That was one of my nations, and they were dicks and took over a bunch of other people's nations.
It all connects now.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I have Canadian lore.
Yeah, there's a couple different a few different nations in Twin Mask that are based off of the old like text RP that we used to do. We also had an online Neverwinter Nights server that we used to play on that also kind of did some of the background events that happened like right before the beginning of Twin Mask, because the game was actually set in the amalgamation like right around the time that the voice of Chorus was killed. But yeah, so it was just interesting, like having all these things that are background and like setting information for Twin Mask that was actually played out by people. Some of them have no connection to Twin Mask whatsoever, but their like nations still exist, which is really cool.
That is cool.
That is really cool to know.
So I want to know if you guys have run into this one issue that I've run into with text-based RP. And I have this more with my Star Wars game than with Twin Mask, where there's no one creating conflict because we're all on the same side. Do you ever have that issue where like, oh, I want something to happen, but we're just sitting around in a cantina talking because there's no conflict being created by a third party? Like,
I was gonna say Super LARP was like that, but that's a LARP and not a forum thing.
Yeah. I think part of the inherent issue with at least with the Twin Mask chat in Discord is that it's kind of hard to create conflict there because we're not supposed to use stats in any way. So, I mean, obviously there are certain things that you just can't do. I don't know if it's the same in your other group.
it is a little different. With Twin Mask, obviously you're not allowed to use, anything skill-based like you said. Mm-hmm. But I've seen plenty of, personal conflict happening with characters. And I think that's super interesting because I don't get as much of that with my Star Wars group. Because with Star Wars, we're all playing on the team of the Empire. Mm. We're not versus the Rebels. I might be playing a different character if I want to play someone in the Alliance. So there's not a lot of crossover. The other issue with my club, it's always been, you can't kill another character without their permission. Right. So you can walk up to Empress Palpatine and moon her and nothing will happen to you because, there's no consequence for that. We haven't brought this up. Sorry, we're not allowed to kill you. So I haven't seen as much of that issue in Twin Mask because although we have the big plotty conflicts and all the stuff that you and John and the rest of the staff create, we still have enough conflict
Yeah.
between ourselves, and it's been great watching what's been going down since the last game with the potential war with Cole and how friends have become enemies, and just watching them role play that conflict on Discord and having a great time doing it.
I'm glad you're having a fun time. My heart for my character is not okay.
Yes, but that's the fun, is having those conflicts, honey.
Who cries in the corner?
Oh, poor little Drew Dean baby.
Blah blah blah.
Yeah, a lot of my online roleplay has been with vampire, either in the local setting or the local chapter or the national game, and often those national games, like in my case it was One World by Night. Like there was heavy conflict and politics, and if you did something wrong you could be killed, not online because everybody else was affected by the overall power play. I still feel bad for getting a couple of people killed that were not supposed to have been killed, because I basically said I just chastised a person in public and said no, stop, you're wrong. In fact, I'm going to strip myself of status so that you lose status. That's how much I hate whatever's going on. And then everybody else followed suit and stripped him to nothing within 3 hours. I meant to humiliate him, but I did not mean to get him killed. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, like, sometimes that online conflict, especially when you're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of people, you don't know what can get construed. Especially if there's going to be different types of politics happening in their local chapter that you're not aware of, but they present differently nationally than they do locally. And often when I played Vampire in the past, that was the big deal with Virgo. He was great nationally, but locally he was not as popular as people thought he was.
In regards to online RP going in a direction that you didn't intend it to go, like, do you find that there's a point where, because it's text-based and there's just so much that you can put into text, there's like a point of no return where you can't turn it around?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
No?
Well, you bring up a point, because I've seen people who've been like, wait, this scene went completely off the rails. My character wouldn't have done this. It shouldn't have gone this way. Can we take it back? So it's rare, but I've seen that.
In Twin Mask specifically, one thing that happened was as soon as the first Council of Souls was made, one of the things, yes, the first Council of Souls was made, and suddenly we were trying to determine pins of status, and I think a bunch of us wanted 7 pins, which is like basically a ruler because we were in charge, and I think it was only Sicarl at the time that said, no, this is absolutely wrong. And even there was a point where John kind of took me aside. It's like, Ryan, you know that this is absolutely wrong. It's like, yes. So I had to argue against the rest of council. It's like, look, we cannot be 7 pins. And there's a precedent in Ad Decimum that all of their council of elders have 5 pins. We can be 5. But it took me 2 hours of straight role playing and convincing them, this is wrong. And I had to just keep fighting until it was done. And I think part of it had to do with the other role play that I described, where you had to take people's words, twist them around, find loopholes, and do all of those things. But I also had to think about the reason why I'm doing this is not because, you aren't important. It's because this is how everybody else will perceive us. Mm-hmm. And if we want to be respected by everybody else, we need to play by those rules. And I say, in order for us to be that powerful, we need to go with 5 pins, not 7. No one wants to deal with 7 kings. Or it will not work. They will come and kill us. And that's basically how I had to argue for 2 hours. Like, I remember 2 hours because it was like 2 hours I should have been doing work, and I was just dealing with that. But it was also infinitely more fascinating because the politics were just interesting, and all the players knew that they shouldn't be doing it, but it's what their character would have wanted. Mm-hmm. So they weren't like doing this to cheese. They were doing this because 2 of the Offendal, who are not used to that kind of society, thought, oh, you want to be the most respected, get more pins. Mm-hmm. So they knew that they were not trying to, cheese the system. They just wanted to get the respects. But you can argue your way through it, or you can turn things around no matter how bad they seem.
I feel like it'd be easier in like immediate text responses, like if you're doing like messenger RP instead of in forum RP. I feel like it would be slightly more difficult to turn a scene around if it went way off the rails, but I don't know, maybe that's just me.
I think you're right, because I did it through IMs.
Yeah.
If I did it on forum, I'd be screwed.
Yeah.
So before we go, I wanted to give some shout outs to our Patreon supporters, especially those in Lost Colonies, our friend Aaron Ludlow and Talon Bowler, and our friends at Geeky Tees, hey Donna, and of course Twin Mask.
Yay!
So Courtney,
Yes.
where can people find you on the internets?
Well, tonight you can find me on Discord because I want to go roleplay right now. But if you're not on Discord server with me, you can find me on Twitter at @theanimegoddess.
All right.
You can find me on Instagram at its__Lex. And that's it.
Oh man, I got the long one. All right, here we go. So you can find me on Tuesday nights on Sirens of the Realm. That's twitch.tv/DND. That starts at 7 p.m. I play Girasol the Fire Genasi. You can find me on Friday night-ish. By this point, actually, yeah, my episode would be airing. So you can find me on Friday nights, LA by Night, which is a Vampire the Masquerade live stream show on Geek and Sundry. Yay! We are we're putting some bonus stuff out there. So my episode is the epilogue, one of the epilogues for my character. So stay tuned for that. This show, find us bi-weekly live action roleplay on Wednesdays. If you want to find me on the social media, is at @SinDancer is my handle for Twitter. I finally figured it out. I'm actually very active on there now, so come find me and talk to me. Instagrams, if you guys want to see some of the wig, makeup, and costume stuff that I do, plus really cool Twin Mask pictures when I get back there. It's Instagram Cynthia__Marie. That is 2 underscores. And yeah, I think that's it for right now.
Okay, and you can find me on Instagram, me as in Angela, at Angelic Ophelia with a dot in between Angelic and Ophelia. I mean, you can find it either way, but yeah. So yeah, if you want to check out any of my costuming and prop making, find me on there.
All right, and this is Ryan Omega. You could find me on Instagram under Ryan Omega, under Twitter under Ryan OMGA. You could find me on Saturdays on the Maze Arcana channel on the show Anasidora playing Delexo. You could find me on Kelly Eden's YouTube channel on Dacian Bratz playing Toshidora Paloma, the character that is based on Eric Cartman from South Park as a D&D character, an evil 10-year-old and spoiled rich Dacian. Let me see. On Mondays, I do a Facebook Live tarot reading called #WeeklyForecast, where I and a bunch of my friends that they're trying to figure out what the group name is. We're going from Peanut Gallery to something else. And where I do read tarot cards, and not just with tarot cards, sometimes with joking hazard cards. D&D monster cards have been pretty accurate as well. And yeah, and here on Live Action Roleplay. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, bye!